Chapter 836. I am the master of this world 10 years later. 10 years is not such a long time. In fact, for cultivators, who live for a long time, 10 years are just a short period of meditation. They can squander away time wantonly, and it does not matter whether it is 10 years, 100 years, or even more. This was something that was the source of envy for mortals. It was also something they longed for. Perhaps longevity was the desire that spurred an average person to dream of becoming a cultivator, but it was definitely not the reason for all to become cultivators. Besides longevity, one of the reasons why a person would dream of becoming a cultivator was because they wanted to not idle away even as they squandered off time. To an average person, 10 years might not be their entire lifetime, but it would become a source of nostalgia. 10 years ago, perhaps there was still a person who kept them company. 10 years ago, that person was perhaps still an undecided young boy full of dreams. 10 years ago, that person perhaps still did not know how to treasure what was beside him. 10 years ago, that person perhaps was still laughing happily and foolishly without worry. But 10 years later, that person would only look at the blue sky, the white clouds, the sun setting and rising, and he would sigh. In the end, he was still just a normal person. 10 years could change a mortal, but it could not change too many cultivators. However, it could make a certain set of memories be gradually buried in a cultivator's heart, and like a zither string, if no hands went to pluck it and cause it to shiver, it would remain still and silent. The shock within the land with the 100,000 stone monuments 10 years ago was one such thing. It had turned into a thought buried deep within the hearts of the people there, and one that no one wanted to talk about. However, the thoughts that would gather in their eyes would occasionally make them warily cast their gazes at the stone monument standing erect among the many others in the place. A stone monument that was 1 million feet tall, and on which Mosu's name was carved. 10 years ago, 10,000 stone monuments out of 100,000 had shattered. 10,000 out of 100,000 cultivators died. It shocked the entire foreign land, causing all the people to gasp in astonishment. While those emotions were buried in the depths of their hearts 10 years later, Mosu's stone monument was the only one that attracted gazes again and again. Among those gazes were Ju Kang's, those who came after Su Ming's life, and those who were in the land since before Su Ming came. Perhaps they were not persistently waiting for him to appear. Perhaps they were not really that curious. However, even without any discussions, everyone was certain that the horror of the disaster 10 years ago had a connection to Mosu's stone monument. They were instinctively waiting. Waiting for the moment Mosu would appear after not showing up for 10 years. Perhaps at that moment, they would be able to find the reason behind the disaster those years ago. During the 10 years, there were no longer any boundaries between the 100,000 galaxies in which the purple Ikang's bodies resided. They had fused together, but Su Ming's deep slumber continued, and he showed no signs of waking up. Another 10 years passed. The 100,000 galaxies had already fused together completely. The next step was to fuse the 100,000 hearts that had been dyed black. While Su Ming slept for 60 years, the people within the land that now had just 90,000 stone monuments gradually grew used to his stone monument standing erect by its lonesome. They got used to the master of the stone monument not walking out, used to the lack of the 10,000 monuments that had been destroyed. In fact, during the 60 years, there were thousands of newcomers who had come to this place, and they did not know about the disaster 60 years ago. The first thing they saw then were the 90,000 stone monuments, and they thus believed that there had always been only 90,000 stone monuments here. During those years, the 100,000 galaxies had completely fused together in Su Ming's world and created an incredibly great galaxy. The 100,000 black hearts were also slowly merging together. They turned into one single entity that floated within the gigantic galaxy. However, Su Ming still remained in deep sleep, because what came next was the fusion between the 100,000 Ikang trees. The 100,000 purple Ikangs would gather together into one gigantic body. Another 60 years went by. It was already 120 years since then. If 10 years could turn something into a mere memory, then 100 years could turn something into a legend. That was how it would be for a mortal. To cultivators, in this unique and dull land of 90,000 stone monuments, the event 100 years ago gradually faded away as they moved into the worlds in their stone monuments repeatedly, growing their stone monuments toward the 1 million feet. There was nothing different about the place. Even though the 100,000 stone monuments had reduced to only 90,000, they still had the 1 million feet test, along with the trips into memories. When another 60 years passed, there were only a handful of people that remembered Su Ming. Zhu Kang was one of the few who did. He could not forget Su Ming, could not forget the person who loved to remain silent and had helped him to take his revenge in exchange for his experience. When the end of the fourth cycle of 60 years arrived, 240 years had flowed by. In Su Ming's world, an incredibly huge tree that towered into the heavens had gathered in the vast galaxy. The tree occupied most of the galaxy, and there was an ancient, age-old presence exuding from it. That tree was entirely purple, and it had an indescribable mighty pressure coming from it. It was the only true existence in the galaxy at that moment. If anyone looked closely, a person would be vaguely able to see that there was a golden light within that purple tree. At first glance, it might seem purple, but in truth, it was a fusion between purple and gold. The purple shade was its foundation, and the gold its essence. At the instant the purple tree's body was completely formed, its purple light surged into the heavens. Once it illuminated the entire galaxy, its body shrank. This was not a simple shrinking in size, but a form of retraction. It was a rebirth, where the tree withered away, but not entirely. It was as if there was a life that was about to be born within the trunk. This was the birth of this life which needed the tree's nutrients. It would continuously gather them, and the tree would shrink. This process lasted for 60 years. From the time Su Ming fell asleep to this moment, 5 cycles of 60 years had passed. That was 300 years. It was enough for all the people in the land with 90,000 stone monuments to forget the disaster all those years ago, and also enough for the gazes that often landed on Su Ming's stone monument to reduce to only one. That gaze that constantly watched the stone monument belonged to Zhu Kang. During the 300 years, he had managed to make his stone monument reach 900,000 something feet multiple times. He took the test multiple times, but failed every single time. However, this was no longer the most important thing in his life. At that moment, he was still watching Su Ming's stone monument, because he wanted to verify whether his deceased wife's guess all those years ago had been true. Because once he arrived at the later stage of World Plane Realm, he had long since understood that all the memories within the world of the stone monuments were fake. It was something that belonged to the passage of time. His wife's guess had to be real. Su Ming was neither his friend nor his relative, but the path Su Ming took was given by Zhu Kang. The path he took was his wife's guess and her conclusion. Since his wife had died, this was the thing that supported Zhu Kang, the only thing that got him moving forward. Another 10 years went by. When the 310th year was almost completely gone, no one within the world of the 90,000 stone monuments noticed a change in their worlds. This change came from Su Ming's world. He had opened his eyes. In that vast galaxy within Su Ming's world, the tree was no longer around. What existed at that moment was a young man with long black hair and black eyes. His hair reached his feet, and his face was so pale that he looked sick. However, a vast amount of life force that could suffocate others rose up with a bang within the young man's body. During the 300 years, Su Ming had completed the third step of the Abyss Builder's possession. He turned something decaying into something astonishing, and from the Yikang tree, he formed a clone that belonged to him. This would be the first clone in the endless passage of time that was formed after possessing an entity like Yikang within the entire universe. This clone was not within the laws of the universe. It surpassed them. This was Su Ming's strongest clone. This was Yikang's clone. He opened his eyes. At the instant Su Ming opened his eyes, the entire galaxy trembled, and as if it was submitting to him, an endless amount of cracks spread out. It was as if with just one thought, Su Ming could make this galaxy crumble and shatter. There was an endless amount of golden light within his eyes, along with overlapping shadows of runic symbols in his right eye. These shadows replaced his pupils and exuded an indescribably mighty pressure. If anyone met his gaze at that moment, then right at that instant, a loud bang would ring out in their hearts, and their minds would be torn to shreds. At the instant Su Ming's clone, which had mastered a portion of Sui Chenzi's divine essence and gathered together a portion of the complete Yikang's body, was formed, he possessed a power that surpassed his imagination. Perhaps more accurately speaking, This was no longer a power, but an instinct that allowed him to control divine essence. I don't know how strong this clone is, but I can feel that I am the master of these 100,000 galaxies. Now, even those at the peak of the middle stage of world plane realm like Zhao family's progenitor appeared. No matter how many of them there were, I would be able to instantly wipe all of them away with this clone of mine. Perhaps I could even fight against the ancient wills within Yin Death region. However, this is only my current self. I can sense it strongly. This body is still like that of a newborn. It is still growing up, and with each breath, it is getting stronger. As Su Ming whispered to himself, the golden light in his eyes became as bright as the sun. From now on, all the 90,000 stone monuments in the world can never reach 10 million feet. Their limit will be 9 million feet, because the final 1 million feet of those 10 million feet shall eternally belong only to me. A faint smile appeared on Su Ming's face. He lifted his right hand and swung it before him. Immediately, a wave of distorted ripples appeared in the galaxy before him. Those ripples spread out swiftly, and after a moment, a body appeared within them that gradually floated towards Su Ming. This was his Crimson Python Phoenix clone. It was also his first clone that acted as his physical body, which he used to train the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole. Yikang's clone refines divine essence. The clone that trained in the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole refines my physical body. My real self in the land of immortals refines my soul. I need one more clone to refine my epiphany. Now, this clone that trained in the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole should get stronger. Golden light shone in Su Ming's eyes, and he pointed towards that clone with his right index finger. I am the master of this galaxy formed by the fusion of 100,000 galaxies. With a single thought, I'll have this body become stronger, Su Ming whispered softly. At the instant he finished speaking, a set of laws and rules immediately appeared in the vast galaxy, and all of them gathered on Su Ming's clone that trained in the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole. When Su Ming's clone opened his eyes, a burst of powerful presence erupted forth like a tidal wave. Chapter 837. Limit the clone that trained in the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole, which Su Ming had formed by possessing the Crimson Python Phoenix, had passed through the first disaster of the 9 disasters that came with the Duke of Crimson Flame Race's unparalleled art for physical bodies. From then on, it had reached the level of a paragon, and Su Ming had entered World Plane Realm with it. However, that clone was just in the initial stage of World Plane Realm. He needed to devour more power of world planes and survive through several more disasters before getting sufficiently stronger. However, the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole became increasingly more difficult to train the more one advanced through it, and before Su Ming stepped into Western Ring Nebula's foreign land, he had stopped devouring the power of world planes, because once he reached the second state of completion, his soul would fuse completely with this physical body, removing the inborn talent of the Abyss Builders to make their clones from him. His soul would not even be able to fuse with his real physical body in the land of immortals. Su Ming thought about it before. If he could not find a suitable being for possession, then he would randomly choose one to possess. After all, he could not let his cultivation stop because of this. Even if there were plenty of problems that would come if he chose randomly, he still had to do it. Yet now, the matter that had him hesitating had been resolved perfectly. Even if his Yikang clone wasn't what he had originally intended to for a clone to gain an epiphany for his cultivation, the divine essence Yikang's body refined surpassed Su Ming's expectations and turned into a serendipity that could change his entire life. It was especially since with this serendipity, he escaped from the control of the wills in Yin Death region and the seal Di Qian had hidden deep within him. To Su Ming, this outcome was as great as him obtaining his Yikang clone. Besides, once he obtained it, Su Ming could divide his soul. Because of it, he could be at complete ease when leaving a portion of his soul in the clone that trained in the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole, allowing it to continue going through the 9 disasters. As these thoughts fleeted through Su Ming's mind, he looked at that clone, and the clone also looked back at him. As their gazes met each other, a feeling of perfect harmony rose within him. This was a very mysterious feeling. It was as if a single being had 2 bodies. Perhaps this comparison was not really that accurate. At that moment, what Su Ming felt was that these 2 clones had turned into his left and right hands. His soul was his mind, and he could control them with ease. There was no lack of fluency in his movements. This clone should be stronger. When Su Ming mumbled this, the clone which trained in the art of swallowing hollow shadows opened his mouth and said the same things as Su Ming did. Laws surrounded him, and rules filled the air. Upon the voicing of those words, a loud bang rang out in the galaxy. It echoed in all directions, and faint shadows of a planet appeared as the galaxy trembled. That planet was golden in color. Soon after, the second, third, fourth, and up to the 100,000th planet appeared. Once the 100,000 galaxies fused together, they had not just formed the purple Yikang. The 100,000 planets in the place had also gathered together, but they had not turned into one single planet. Instead, they turned into a golden cosmos formed by 100,000 planets. The light from the cosmos shone endlessly, and there were hints of purple within that golden light. At the instant it illuminated the entire galaxy, Su Ming's Yikang clone casually swung his right hand before himself. Cosmos formed by 100,000 planets, the 100,000 planets that are the start of my cosmos. I will now awaken your essence of the world. Right when Su Ming finished saying his final word, waves of presence that belonged to the essence of worlds erupted with a bang from the 100,000 planets. Their presences fused together and spread all over the galaxy. At the instant they shook it, Su Ming spoke again. The power of world planes shall be born within the essence of worlds. Boom! A tremendous amount of power of world planes erupted from the cosmos, and it was so dense that it could not be described with words. In an instant, it surged into Su Ming's clone which trained in the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole. As the power of world planes gathered on him, the hair on that clone started moving without wind, and the powerful presence increased exponentially within that body. Su Ming lifted his head and looked at the cosmos before looking down and mumbling under his breath, "Absorb at will. Now that I have become the master of 100,000 galaxies, from now on, I will not let anyone manipulate me." His face was pale. The runic symbols overlapped in his right eye, which had an air of ancientness to it. Before him, as the presence of the clone that trained in the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole continued rising without end, and the power of world planes born from the essence of worlds from the 100,000 planets continued fusing into him, the clone reached the second state of completion in the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole. From now on, this clone will become my strongest body in terms of the power of Qi. If each of my clones can become the strongest, when I eventually fuse with all of them. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. Boom! Once the clone reached his second state of completion, he took a step forward. The second disaster descended on him, causing a faint wisp of a presence that did not belong to the 100,000 galaxies to immediately appear. That presence which did not belong to Su Ming appeared from the clone that trained in the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole. It was just like when he experienced the first disaster. Besides the final 3 disasters, the 9 disasters from the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole from the Duke of Crimson Flame's race were all born within the physical bodies, as if they were experiencing a backlash. But gone. Su Ming's expression was indifferent as he spoke calmly. With that one word, the galaxy instantly distorted, and a tremendous will erupted from Su Ming's Yikang clone, sweeping towards the clone that trained in the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole like a windstorm. It only lasted for the span of one breath. At the instant this invisible windstorm that contained Su Ming's will touched the clone, the second disaster which had been born within the clone immediately fell apart, and the presence which did not belong in this galaxy disappeared like the wind. When the second disaster vanished, the clone which trained in the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole lifted his head and let out a low roar. As it echoed in space, he instantly rose from the initial stage of world plane realm to the peak of the initial stage, then straight towards attaining completion in the initial stage. The increase of strength by multiple fold made the clone let out a long cry. It was a shout that shook the sky and earth. His hair fluttered in space, and during that instant, his body became much stronger than before. When he clenched his fist, the feeling that he had full control was absolutely wonderful, and it was a feeling that could get people addicted. This feeling of becoming stronger instantly, especially the exponential increase of levels within world plane realm, would immediately fill any other person with surprised delight and excitement, but Su Ming's 2 clones only frowned at the same time. This was an incredibly dense power of world planes, and based on what the Duke of Crimson Flame said when he taught me this art, once I got through the second disaster, I should have reached the middle stage of World Plane Realm. And since the middle stage of World Plane Realm is much stronger than the initial stage of World Plane, that is why I would need the third and fourth disasters before I could reach completion the middle stage of World Plane Realm. During the fifth disaster, I could reach the later stage of World Plane Realm, and when I reached the ninth disaster, I would attain completion in World Plane Realm. Once I fused the 9 disasters in my body, I could form Lunar Kalpa and become a powerful warrior in Lunar Kalpa realm. But now that I've completed the second disaster, I've only reached the peak of the initial stage in World Plane Realm. Something is wrong here. A contemplative look appeared in the eyes of both Su Ming's clones. Once they exchanged glances, the Yikang clone sent his will outwards, and it immediately gathered on the clone that trained in the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole. As he observed him carefully, he controlled the power of world planes around him to surge into him once again. As the clone absorbed the power, reaching the third state of completion, and Su Ming wiped off the third disaster, his clone became stronger once again. Booming sounds echoed in space non-stop, akin to a drum being struck within the clone, and he immediately moved from the peak of the initial stage in World Plane Realm to the middle stage of World Plane Realm. The middle stage of World Plane Realm was completely different from the initial one. It was just like how Su Ming had been able to kill those in the initial stage of World Plane Realm in the past, but was forced to flee when he came face to face against those in the middle stage. These were 2 completely different stages. In fact, it could even be said that only those in the middle stage of World Plane Realm could truly be considered lords of world planes, and only when they reached this stage could they treat those in Heaven Cultivation Realm like ants. Su Ming might have become stronger, but his brows were still furrowed. After a moment of pensive silence, he gathered the power of world planes from the 100,000 planets to come forth once more. Time trickled by slowly. After an hour, the clone reached the 4th state of completion. Su Ming neutralized the 4th disaster, and his body became stronger once again. His presence became monstrous and shook the entire area. Several hours passed, and the 5th state of completion also arrived. If the Duke of Crimson Flame was awake at that moment, then this training speed and increase in levels would have definitely shocked him so much that he would have been tongue-tied and staring at Su Ming, wide-eyed. This was the right only possessed by those who controlled an entire galaxy. So the 5th disaster disappeared. The strength of the physical body of the clone that trained in the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole reached the stage that was near the peak of the middle stage of World Plane Realm. At this stage, if he returned to 1,000 years ago, then with his chi alone, he could fight against Zhao family's progenitor on equal grounds. After all, Zhao family's progenitor was just at the peak of the middle stage in the World Plane Realm. However, this sort of power had allowed his family to become the 3rd in Western Ring Nebula, and this was a show of how powerful he was. I knew it. Something is wrong. I would have let it slide if it was just the 2nd disaster that was not as powerful as I thought, but this 5th disaster is supposed to have physical bodies reach the later stage of World Plane Realm, but it only managed to make this clone reach the state that is similar to the peak of the middle stage of World Plane Realm. Is this because this clone of mine is naturally powerful on its own, that's why the art can't reach its ideal condition, or is it because there is a flaw in this clone? Su Ming's eyes shone, and when he manipulated the power of world planes to gather on the clone that trained in the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole once again, he suddenly understood the answer. Because his clone could no longer absorb the power of world planes. The 5th disaster was his limit. It's a flaw. It's the Crimson Python Phoenix's flaw. Su Ming shook his head. All manner of lives in the universe have flaws, and we practice cultivation to mend those flaws. I don't know what are the flaws within the Crimson Python Phoenixes, but there will come a time when I will be able to mend it. Upon falling silent, Su Ming closed his eyes. The clone training in the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole also closed his eyes. The 3rd change of heart should end now, Su Ming mumbled. Thousands of years had flowed by. Age and nostalgia changed places with each other and turned into a thread in the depths of Su Ming's heart. This thread was like the first point he would make when he drew. And now, it had turned into a circle. At the instant Su Ming's 2 clones closed their eyes, a world-changing event occurred in the 100,000 planets in the cosmos. 1. 3rd change of heart, the one Su Ming has to create grass not dolls for. Chapter 838. 100,000 stone monuments, a mountain appeared in each of the 100,000 planets within the cosmos during that instant. That mountain was the 9th summit from Su Ming's memories. When the 100,000 9th summits were born within the 100,000 planets, the two Su Ming clones who had their eyes shut lifted their hands at the same time. Golden threads appeared out of thin air and surrounded the two clones. As Su Ming's two clones started weaving them at will, he started tying knots on them to weave the people in his memories. Without the will of Yin Death region interfering, Su Ming regained his emotions and his ability to feel pain. He immersed himself in the process of weaving grass knots using divine essence as time passed, turning all the people in his memories that he could not forget into divine essence dolls in his hands. This was the third change of heart Su Ming had not been able to complete when he first arrived in Crimson Flame Planet. In truth, when he returned to the disaster of the 9th summit in the world within the stone monument and killed his mortal foes with his own hands, he could have completed the third change of heart at any time he wanted. However, he had a burden in his heart, and it was the mask that was formed by Yin Death region's wills. As long as that burden was not gotten rid of, it would be difficult for him to complete the third change of heart. When the control of Yin Death region's wills disappeared, the burden in Su Ming's heart disappeared as well. That was why when he closed his eyes, he began moving towards completing his change of heart. The galaxy was silent. There was a smile on Su Ming's two clones. Those smiles were born of the joy found as he returned to his memories. He was immersed in this joy, or perhaps he was immersed in the feeling loss, the return of which brought him joy. With the method of tying grass knots, he was allowing himself to remember the past. The change of heart this time did not shake the sky or earth, neither did it cause loud booms to ring in the air. There was only Su Ming, who with his one soul and two bodies, weaved dolls in silence with a smile that looked happy, but upon closer inspection was full of sadness. The grief in his soul dyed his hands and fused with the golden grass knots, turning into dolls. Divine essence dolls appeared one after another as years passed by. 10 years later, at the moment Su Ming's two clones opened their eyes at the same time, tears fell from down his face, and the third change of heart ended. This change of heart was to Su Ming a way to get closure for all that had happened in the past, and it was also a form of rebirth. He weaved dolls for all the people in his memories. Every single person in his memories had one, but not him. At the instant he opened his eyes, the grief in them gradually turned into dullness, having become something that he would cherish in the depths of his soul and an everlasting memory in the deepest recesses of his heart. During that moment, his level of cultivation broke through the peak of Earth cultivation realm and he reached Heaven cultivation realm before he attained completion, but that was no longer important. Su Ming looked at all the dolls in front of him, looked at the people with the presents based on his memories, and his expression became one of smiling and crying at the same time. Each recollection of his memories as he went to the world in the stone monument time and again during those 1,000 years was part of his third change of heart. Those recollections might have seemed scattered, but there was a single thread that connected them all together. This thread was like a blade of grass, and the recollections were akin to him tying grass knots on that blade of grass. The start of the change of heart in Crimson Flame Planet was the first knot. The recollection of his memories during those 1,000 years were what formed the knots later on. Now, as Su Ming opened his eyes, he tied the final knot on the blade of grass that symbolized his change of heart. At the instant he completed this seemingly disconnected third change of heart, the invisible blade of grass was woven into a doll that represented his change of heart. This doll was the doll that had been missing among all the dolls he'd woven during the 10 years. It was of himself. After a long while, Su Ming closed his eyes once again. When he reopened them, there was only an ancient air to them, nothing more. "It's time that I leave," Su Ming said softly. His Yikang clone took a step forward, but he did not leave this cosmos. Instead, he stepped into the 100,000 galaxies and sat down. At the instant he closed his eyes, his clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole lifted his head and looked at the cosmos that was formed by 100,000 planets. A resolute look appeared in his eyes. He gave up on the idea to have his Yikang clone leave this place. In truth, Su Ming had been constantly pondering on whether he wanted to let his Yikang clone leave this place. Only at that moment did he make his decision. The purple Yikang was only one of the 10 parts of the real Yikang. It was incomplete. Even if it possessed the power to fight against Yin Death region's wills, Su Ming had long since noticed that even though this clone of his would become stronger if he left Western Ring Nebula's foreign land, his cultivation speed would still be unable to compare to when he was in this place. Compared to the world outside, this place was the safest and the most suitable place for him to grow. If Su Ming wanted to have his Yikang clone devour the other 9 parts so that he would become complete, then having the clone stay in this place was the best choice. If he left, there would still be some people who could suppress him. However, if Su Ming had enough time, then his Yikang clone would grow to a point where the universe would tremble before him. Besides, if he left the clone in this place, then while it would be difficult for this Yikang clone to help Su Ming fight against those in Solar Kalpa realm, he could use the power of divine essence in his soul to draw upon divine essence, which would increase Su Ming's power, and his clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole would become much stronger. As the Yikang clone became stronger, Su Ming would also become stronger in the world outside. Until he retrieved his real physical body, his Yikang clone would be his foundation. That was why Su Ming used the power of the cosmos in this place and made his clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole become stronger. Even if this clone had not reached the later stage of World Plane Realm, it had fused with Su Ming's power, and more importantly, once he activated the power of divine essence, Su Ming was confident that he could fight against those in the later stage of World Plane Realm. Besides, if Su Ming ran into a life and death crisis that he could not escape from in the barren lands of divine essence, then his Yikang clone would be able to rush over in a short period of time due to his might. Furthermore, as long as his Yikang clone stayed here, Western Ring Nebula's foreign land would be the safest place for Su Ming. He could even regard this place as a cave abode of his. Over here, Su Ming did not need to worry about any form of threats due to Sui Chenzi's law. However, if he chose to have his Yikang clone leave this place for a prolonged period of time, he would lose all the advantages of this place and the chance to make his Yikang clone become complete. Su Ming made his choice to have his Yikang clone stay. But besides this decision, there was another question that lay at the bottom of Su Ming's heart. It was also one of the reasons why he had decided to have his Yikang clone stay in this place. This question had stayed in Su Ming's heart for a long time. Western Ring Nebula's foreign land is rumored to be an incredibly dangerous place in the world outside. It is rare for anyone to be able to walk out once they enter it. This is something almost every single person in the barren lands of divine essence knows. But, if they know about this, why did so many of them still come here during the past 1,000 years? If it had been a few dozen or a few hundreds, I would have let it slide. I would even regard it as a personal choice. However, several tens of thousands of people have entered, so there must have been a reason for it. I don't even need to guess about it, though. The forces of power from the 4 great true worlds keeping a lookout on the barren lands must have offered a reward that tempted practically all the people. That was why there were so many people who were brave enough to enter this place. All of them were tempted by the possible gains. The forces of power from the 4 great true worlds must know more about Western Ring Nebula's foreign land than anyone else. Their action of offering a reward for people to come to this place for my life might seem reasonable, but in truth, a cold glare appeared in Su Ming's eyes. Unless there is no one from the forces of power from the 4 great true worlds who knows about the secrets of the foreign land. But no, this is impossible. If I were them, then if I couldn't say the secrets of this place and really wanted to have me die, I would straight away enslave 100,000 cultivators and force them into the foreign land to force a complete exchange. In fact, if 100,000 people weren't enough, then they could send in 200,000 people, or 300,000, or even more to ensure this exchange several times, and I would have certainly died. But they didn't. And I refuse to believe that they didn't think about this, and since that's the case. Su Ming's eyes sparkled, and a cold sneer appeared on the corners of his lips. They don't want me dead. Instead, they want to create some false impressions. The goal of it is to. Su Ming lifted his head and cast a glance at the spot where his Yikang clone was, then narrowed his eyes. It can be for this Yikang clone, but there are too many loopholes in this possibility. I can't be sure that they did it because of this. Besides, I only managed to succeed by the skin of my teeth. There's a high possibility they hadn't thought about this, but I have to be on guard against this as well. There's one more possibility. They wish for me to obtain the divine essence using the normal method to make the stone monument reach 1 million feet and obtain a small amount of divine essence as well as the chance to go out for 1,000 years. Could it be that, There are benefits for a person if they kill someone with divine essence. After a moment of pensive silence, he pushed this question to the bottom of his heart, then averted his gaze from his Ikang clone. He took a step toward space, and his body gradually disappeared. As it did so, there was a flash of red that flew out and charged towards the 100,000 galaxies. That was the small candle dragon which was made to stay in this place by Su Ming. This place possessed dense power of world planes, and it could serve as nourishment for the small snake. At the instant Su Ming's clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole left the place, Su Ming's Ikang clone within the 100,000 galaxies opened his eyes. Since I chose to stay here, then there are certain things that I must do. When the Ikang clone spoke flatly, the space behind him immediately distorted, and a colossal shadow of a purple tree manifested in space. It swayed a little, and 10,000 rays of purple light instantly spread out. Within an instant, those 10,000 rays of purple light spread in all directions before vanishing into the cosmos. Once the Ikang clone did this, he shut his eyes again and began a long period of meditation. During that moment, the world which had remained in the state of 90,000 stone monuments for 300-odd years suddenly saw 10,000 rays of light, and buzzing sounds instantly rang in the air. All the people within the worlds of the 90,000 stone monuments were forced out at that moment. For some, this was the first time they experienced this, but there were also quite a large number who experienced this for the second time. In the midst of their shock and astonishment, they could not help but remember the scene 300 years ago, which had almost faded away from their memories. As all the people were forced out, the 10,000 rays of purple light fused into the ground. The ground rumbled and shook, and 10,000 stone monuments rose up. The spots where those 10,000 stone monuments took place were precisely the ones from which they had disappeared 300 years ago. When those 10,000 stone monuments appeared, the number of stone monuments in the place returned to 100,000. The addition of those 10,000 stone monuments did not belong to Ikang or Sui Chenzi, but Su Ming. These were Su Ming's stone monuments. All the people whose names would be carved onto those 10,000 stone monuments would have their lives controlled by Su Ming, and they would offer up all their time and power for Su Ming's Ikang clone to become stronger. From then onwards, this scam within Western Ring Nebula's foreign land would have another person getting a piece from it. At that moment, nearly 90,000 people fell into dead silence. The various thoughts in the minds turned into shock, astonishment, and confusion. In fact, the breathing of some almost stilled as they looked at the new 10,000 stone monuments with a blank expression. Only one person's expression was full of excitement. He did not look at the 10,000 stone monuments but towards the stone monument that belonged to Su Ming, which almost every single person had forgotten during these 300 years. He looked at the stone monument, waiting for a certain person to appear. Gradually, he saw a vortex took shape where Mo Su's name was carved, and a person walked out from that stone monument. He had long grey hair, a straight back, a pale face, and almost bewitching runic symbols overlapping with each other in his right eye. This was Su Ming's clone, which practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole and which also possessed Ikang's divine essence. Chapter 839. Secret of the Stone Monument. More accurately speaking, the rays of purple light that spread out from Su Ming's Ikang clone did not number 10,000 but 9,999. The one remaining ray of light was from Su Ming's stone monument. As the number of stone monuments became the complete number of 100,000 once more, and as the near 90,000 people were in the midst of shock and deathly silence, more people noticed a vortex before Su Ming's stone monument and the powerful light that was gradually spreading out from within there. That light illuminated the entire world, causing all the people there to be unable to look away from it. During that moment, several tens of thousands of people had their gazes trained on the stone monument with Mo Su's name carved on it. Su Ming walked out, catching everyone's eyes. His expression was indifferent as he walked out from the vortex in the stone monument. When he completely moved out, the vortex behind him disappeared, and Su Ming looked at the familiar land of the stone monuments. Hundreds of years had gone by in the blink of an eye to him, and he could only let out a sentimental sigh. 300-something years ago, he had brought with him an indomitable resolve in search for a serendipity, and several hundreds of years later, he returned, bringing with him a great serendipity and a miracle that changed his entire life. Tens of thousands of gazes were trained on him, but they did not cause any fluctuation or any sort of emotion within Su Ming's heart. He swept his gaze across the area, the last spot being his own stone monument. It was now 1,000,000 feet tall as it stood erect among others of its kind. It looked normal, but in Su Ming's eyes, he could see Sui Chenzi's law in the place. He could see the shadow formed by Sui Chenzi's law in the air above the stone monument, and that shadow was bowing to Su Ming at that moment. He seemed to be congratulating him and waiting to be given orders. That action was one of obedience. He was obeying Sui Chenzi's last order, to submit to the person who was chosen by the art created by his one thought. What is the law set by Sui Chenzi? Su Ming sent his thoughts to the shadow. The first rule remains supreme. When not contradicting the first law, the law will protect and wipe out the people here. It will protect the people from being killed by Yikang's soul, and wipe out all those who go against the law. Sui Chenzi's ancient voice traveled into Su Ming's mind. The first rule. Su Ming seemed to have come to understand something. The first rule is that Yikang can use its divine essence as a price, and I will help it kill the people here. However, if the person it wants to kill is someone who had failed to possess it, then no matter what price it wants to pay, it will not be allowed. The rule will allow this person to leave in his own way. Su Ming nodded. He could discover some clues about this from how the purple Yikang had been unable to kill him previously. If there had been no rule, the purple Yikang could have had its will descend in this place and kill him off. It would not have needed to wait so passively. He no longer inquired about Sui Chenzi's laws, but instead looked at his stone monument. In his eyes, the monument was made of purple crystals, but since the surface was rough, no one could see it. In fact, even if they used their divine essence to check it, they would be unable to find any hints about it. Only he, who had control over divine essence and had obtained an Yikang clone, becoming one of the people who could gain a share of the benefits here, could see the secrets of the stone monument at that moment. Is that person Mo Su? He's the person we came here to capture alive. This is he. A buzzing gradually rose from the 90,000-something people talking in the area. What happened just now? Why were we suddenly forced out of the world in the stone monument? Damn it, I was just about to reach a breakthrough. I was just one step away from it. 300 years ago, a similar thing had happened. At that time, he was the only one who did not come out. 300 years later, the same thing repeats, but this time he emerges right after. I absolutely refuse to believe that he has no connection to this. Just what did this Mo Su do in the world of the stone monuments? He could make 10,000 stone monuments disappear, and could also make those 10,000 stone monuments appear again. The volume of discussions gradually increased, but Su Ming looked as if he could not hear any of it. He looked at his own stone monument and saw a purple leaf within the depths of it. At the instant he understood. He shifted his gaze away and looked at the near 10,000 stone monuments that had just appeared in the area, and he saw that each of them were made of purple crystals, and there was a purple leaf within each one. When he looked at the purple leaf, a feeling that he could blend perfectly with it rose within his heart, as if he only needed one thought, and those near 10,000 stone monuments would disappear. With one thought, he could also make those near 10,000 stone monuments reach 1,000,000 feet. In fact, when he closed his eyes, the near 10,000 stone monuments would become his eyes. I see, so it's like this, Su Ming whispered softly to himself. When he swept his gaze across the other 90,000 stone monuments in the area, he nodded. When he looked at the other 90,000 stone monuments, he saw 9 different colors. The number of stone monuments that belonged to each color was 10,000. These stone monuments were all formed by crystals made by their respective colors, and within them was a leaf of the same color. When Su Ming saw all the stone monuments and swept his gaze past those tree leaves, wills that repelled his presence immediately spread out, blocking his gaze from looking at them. There were 9 wills in total, and they all belonged to the 9 different colored groups of stone monuments and their leaves. A smile appeared on Su Ming's face. When he had possessed the purple Yikang, he had always had a question in his heart as to why he was possessing the purple Yikang. Based on his understanding, the purple Yikang had the 100,000 stone monuments in this place. It was a test when they wanted to make their stone monuments reach 1,000,000 feet. With this kind of understanding, he pondered over it for a long time, but could not find his answer. As he came to the end of his train of thought, Su Ming realized that if this was truly the case, then the purple Yikang was definitely the strongest among the 10 souls, because it controlled the growth of all the stone monuments. Among the 100,000 people, there were about 90,000 who were in its control. When he was possessing the purple Yikang, he saw it summon nearly 10,000 rays of purple light. Once he possessed it, those scrambled memories surged into his mind. As he saw what really happened, he understood something. His assumption before had been wrong. The purple Yikang did not control the initial growth of those 100,000 stone monuments. In truth, it only controlled 10,000. Yikang had 10 souls, and each soul possessed 10,000 stone monuments. Only then could balance be maintained. When Sui Chenzi's law chose his stone monument for him, it was already purple. That was why, on the first day he arrived in the land of the stone monuments, he naturally became one of the 10,000 stone monuments the purple Yikang had. Su Ming also realized that besides his, there was not a single stone monument that had surpassed 1 million feet in the area that was purple. Perhaps it was due to all 10,000 of the former purple stone monuments shattering 300-something years ago. But Su Ming could remember clearly all the locations and names of the stone monuments which had surpassed 1 million feet when he first arrived in this place. When he looked at them at the moment, he found that all of them were there, with not a single one added to the pile, and not a single one missing. This gave rise to a question. Why had there not been a single person who had managed to make the purple stone monuments surpass 1 million feet since the time he had come to this place? Su Ming found his answer within the memories of his Yikang clone as well. The person whose name was carved on the last purple stone monument that had surpassed 1 million feet had suddenly died in the world outside 2,000 years ago, causing the stone monument to return to several tens of thousands of feet. By the looks of it, the purple Yikang had intentionally caused around 100 stone monuments to reach 900,000-something feet in one go that year to receive the test. It must have panicked because no stone monument of 1 million feet had appeared. That was why it had intentionally made things easier. Su Ming remembered the people whose stone monuments had grown to 900,000-something feet during that time. Most of them should have been purple. However, clearly, Ju Kang's stone monument was not. These 100,000 stone monuments are divided into 10. The stone monuments of each color can reach up to 10 million feet. Before I possessed Yikang, I thought that there would no longer be any stone monuments that would reach 10 million feet, because I alone have earned the right to 10 million feet. But by the looks of it, my understanding was wrong. Su Ming shook his head. The memories within his Yikang clone were incredibly jumbled up, and he would need time until they fully fused into his mind. That was why he did not immediately seek to find his answers within. But this is even better. My Yikang clone will become even stronger with the help of the power of the 10,000 people, and I will kill all those whose stone monuments have surpassed 1 million feet in the world outside. If that is the case, I can prevent the growth of the stone monuments of the other colors, so only the ones that are purple will continuously become stronger, making it much easier for my Yikang clone to devour the other 9 souls when the time comes. Mo Su. While Su Ming was deep in thought, a voice tinged with uncertainty reached his ears. At the sound of it, Su Ming looked over and saw Ju Kang not too far in the distance. They had not seen each other for 300 years. Ju Kang did not look too different from before, but the ancient air around him was even stronger. When he saw Su Ming, excitement appeared on his face. This excitement was not due to him having a deep friendship with Su Ming, but because he obtained an answer that verified what his wife had said was right. Big Brother Ju. A smile appeared on Su Ming's face as he spoke amiably towards Ju Kang. What happened? You. Why didn't you appear from the world in your stone monument for hundreds of years? Were the 2 abnormalities before and after because of you? Was my wife's guess correct? Ju Kang asked in excitement, his voice quivering. He longed to learn the answer. Even if that answer could not bring him freedom, it was the thing that had puzzled his wife all those years ago. Even if his wife had died, he still wanted to know. Su Ming looked at Ju Kang. If he had not told him of his experience in the past and his wife's guess, then there was a high possibility that Su Ming would not have taken the path of the 5 illusory echelons. If that had happened, then while Su Ming might still have chosen to possess Yikang, the difficulty of the possession would have been so high that it was very likely that he would have failed with the slightest mistake. In fact, if Su Ming was to possess Yikang again, He was not entirely certain he would succeed. Just as Su Ming was about to answer Ju Kang's question, he suddenly frowned and lifted his head to look at the air above him. That moment, after a series of guesses and considerations, plenty of people from the 90,000 something of those in the area became aware of who he was. You're Mo Su, the one who is wanted by the 4 great true worlds. Damn it, it's you. If you didn't provoke the forces of power from the 4 great true worlds keeping a lookout on this place and had them place a bounty on your head, why would we come to this accursed place and lose our freedom? Bastard, I might be unable to kill you here, but you also lost your freedom and can't go out. You will also have to face the possibility of being selected to die. I'd like to see just who among us will die first. Sinister words instantly rose into the air. The cultivators who said these words were the ones who came to this place during the past 300 years, and they knew that there was a rule here that forbade them from attacking. However, the grievances they had suffered during the past 300 years made them immediately throw out scathing words once they recognized Su Ming. Almost the moment those sinister words were spoken, booming sounds came from the air above. Hundreds of figures appeared at the same time, and as they descended to the place, their faces filled with different expressions of confusion, uncertainty, surprised delight, shock, and many other types of emotions. These were newcomers, but Su Ming was not looking at them. He was still looking at the air. 1. The matter of numbers. I wonder if any of you were confused as I was by the numbers when you first saw it and went back to compare with the final Ikang as his clone chapter. In any case, this is how I understand it. Ikang was split up into 1 million parts. It has 10 colors. Each color has 100,000 parts. There are 10 foreign lands. 4 are in sinful barren lands. The remaining 6 should be in divine essence star ocean. In each foreign land, there are 100,000 stone monuments. 10,000 belong to one color, so 10 colors x 10,000 stone monuments 100,000. 100,000 stone monuments x 10 foreign lands 1 million stone monuments. By extension, it also means that 10,000 stone monuments of one color x 10 foreign lands 100,000 stone monuments of one color. I made this because I originally had the misconception that one foreign land belongs to just one Ikang of a single color, hence all 100,000 stone monuments belong to it, which is wrong. And so, the 100,000 galaxies, planets, Ikang trees, Venus pathways, and golden hearts from before were not from one foreign land, but was 10,000 worlds each from all 10 foreign lands. Do keep in mind that this is my interpretation at the point I translated this chapter, and I might be wrong. I'm welcome to hear different views to the numbers. Chapter 840, Wiping Off Bastard. If it wasn't because we can't attack in this place, then I would definitely kill you. You're the one who caused us to fall to such a state. You deserve to die. The ones who had thrown out biting and sinister words at Su Ming just now were looking at the hundreds of new people descending to the place with pleasure within them in regards to their misery. They continued venting out their frustrations with curses. In this place where they were not allowed to fight back, besides using cruel words to curse others, there was no other way for them to vent their anger. Even if flinging verbal abuse brought no physical harm to others, if they did not do this, what else could they do? I curse you that your entire family dies. I curse you that your race will die a horrific death. I curse you that your lover will be abused by others. I curse you that your bloodline will end. That's right, everything is because of you, you damned bastard. If I get the chance to make my stone monument reach 1 million feet, I'll go and search for the people who are acquainted with you in the world outside during those 1,000 years and kill all of them so that I can vent my hatred. The voices rose and fell without stop. These people sounded as if they had descended into madness, and their verbal abuses grew stronger. The hundreds of years' worth of oppression made it difficult for them to remain relaxed and calm. Once they witnessed the deaths of those in the area again and again, they placed the fault for all of this on Su Ming. Su Ming looked as if he did not hear any of it. His indifferent expression caused the insults and curses to become even stronger. In fact, an even larger amount of people started throwing rebukes and slurs at Su Ming. They wished that Su Ming would retaliate, because only then would they be able to find a hint of pleasure and be able to bury some of the despair they felt in this land. They were pitiful people. Because if a cultivator was reduced to a state in which they could only shout and scream, it was certainly a miserable thing. In the mid of their slandering, Su Ming looked at the air calmly. At the instant the hundreds of newcomers descended in the place and their bodies landed on the ground, the hundreds of purple stone monuments in Su Ming's eyes started shining with a brilliant light. Under that light, names started appearing on hundreds of stone monuments. The light continued shining brightly, and those hundreds of stone monuments immediately rose. This was the initial increase of height based on the person's level of cultivation. As booming sounds reverberated in the air, one of the stone monuments among the hundreds of new ones reached 30,000 something feet. Most of the remaining ones were only 20,000 something feet tall. It was rare for a stone monument to start off at 30,000 something feet in this place. Immediately, some of the people's gazes fixed on an old man. The old man's face was gloomy as blood trickled out of the corners of his mouth. He wiped away the blood and quietly sat down to meditate. He completely ignored the gazes looking at him from the area. Instead, he lifted his head and looked at the air. A wave of killing intent as well as hatred showed up in the depths of his eyes. It's him. Su Ming cast the old man a glance and smiled faintly. Peak of the middle stage of World Plane Realm. This person is an old monster at the peak of the middle stage of World Plane Realm. By the looks, he's injured. Could it be that he came to this place to hide from his enemies? Zhao family's progenitor. His Zhao family's progenitor. What happened outside during these hundreds of years? How could Zhao family's progenitor be forced to this place? In the mid of the people's shock, most of the hundreds of people besides the old man looked around them with complicated expressions. Once they saw the 90,000 people in the place, they were first taken aback, but as they swept their gaze across the crowd, their eyes landed on Su Ming, and some of them immediately revealed surprised delight. Mo Su. His Mo Su. I remember him. He hasn't changed at all during these 1,000 years. He's the Mo Su that can give us our freedom. A man with an incredibly hot temper lifted his head and laughed at the sky. Within an instant, he charged towards Su Ming. His movements were seen by the 90,000 people in the place, and their gazes turned into ones of mockery and derision. Those were the expressions of people watching something for entertainment. They could already imagine the moment of the person's death. Mo Su. The man traveled incredibly quickly. He closed in on Su Ming in the blink of an eye, and as he laughed ferociously, he lifted his right hand. But just as his hand was about to strike, Su Ming averted his gaze from the air and cast him a flat look. Just that one gaze alone instantly caused booming sounds that were akin to thunder exploding to rise in the man's heart. He had a strong feeling that while Su Ming's gaze seemed calm, it possessed a mighty pressure that he could not fight against. This mighty pressure surpassed all manner of power and stood above all things. In fact, the man had the feeling that he had become a servant, and his life was in Su Ming's hands. With just one thought, he might be reduced to dust and vanish into thin air, no matter what cultivation he possessed. The mighty pressure pressing down on his soul turned into a sharp pain that morphed into fear, and he shuddered in midair while letting out a shrill scream. His body plunged down, and as it swiftly withered away, his screams of pain echoed in the air, but he did not immediately die. Clearly, Su Ming did not want to kill him. This man was a person from a purple stone monument, and Su Ming was the master of the purple stone monuments. This scene immediately attracted the attention of the hundreds of newcomers. Their expressions changed, a telling sign that they were shocked and frightened by this scene. Even the gloomy-looking Zhao family's progenitor instinctively cast a glance in that direction, noticing Su Ming. At the instant he looked over, he recognized Su Ming. With a slightly complicated expression, he shook his head. Zhao family's progenitor looked away once again with a gloomy look, as if he was waiting for something. Ignoring the screaming man, Su Ming looked at Zhu Kang and said softly, "Big brother Zhu, your wife's and your guess was correct." Once Su Ming finished saying these words, he swept his gaze over the people who had been flinging verbal insults at him just now. "You are pitiful," he said calmly. "If you want freedom, then I will give you freedom." He spoke in a relaxed manner, and as he did so, he lifted his right hand and pointed forward. That finger was directed towards the old man who had cursed Su Ming's entire race. The old man's lips curled up into a cold sneer. They could not attack each other in this place. If Mo Su dared attack him, then he would definitely die, so the old man was not frightened. Instead, as he laughed coldly, he continued speaking. Not only will I curse your entire race, I will also curse your... Before he could finish his sentence, his expression suddenly changed drastically. The instant Su Ming pointed at his body, he started disappearing, starting from his feet. This is impossible. You. The old man's expression was filled with shock. Fear took root in his heart and body, but he could only speak up to that point. At that moment, his body swiftly turned into dust, as if his existence was forcefully wiped off. You too. Su Ming pointed again, and another cultivator that had thrown slanderous remarks just now was instantly reduced to ashes as he screamed shrilly. This scene completely stunned all the people in the land. To them, this was a terrifying event, something past the boundaries of their imagination, since Su Ming had killed, but he was not at all punished. This caused the people's fears to immediately become much greater. And you too. Su Ming lifted his finger and pointed once more. Immediately, another person disappeared with a shrill scream. Because of that, a commotion instantly broke out in the land. As everyone moved back, the people who had cursed Su Ming just now immediately fell into madness. Some of them retreated, while others charged towards Su Ming with a glint in their eyes. At that moment, a thought had risen in the hearts of all those rushing towards Su Ming. Could it be that they could attack in this place now? Yet at the instant they activated their divine abilities, a great will swept through the place. All those whose divine abilities landed on Su Ming were wiped off once that will swept past them. Fear, shock, disbelief, and various other emotions rose within the hearts of the tens of thousands of people during that moment. They could not believe what they were seeing. All those who had insulted Su Ming just now and had not died immediately entered the worlds in their stone monuments to hide. The fear in their hearts turned into despair, as well as surging hatred and terror. They could not understand why Su Ming could kill. And, by the looks of it, he was not attacking with his power. Instead, the law in the land seemed to be obeying his words. As long as he wanted to kill, the law of the land would wipe off those he wanted dead. At the moment Su Ming saw the people scattering and some of them reaching for their stone monuments, making it seem that it would be difficult for him to instantly kill all of them. Su Ming opened his mouth and said flatly, "Wipe them all off." The shadow in the air which was formed by the law of the land and which could only be seen by Su Ming bent his back and bowed. Then the will of the law immediately spread out. Shrill screams of pain traveled out of the mouths of all those who had insulted Su Ming. As their bodies were about to shatter, their expressions filled with fear and despair. Suddenly, all the cultivators in the land felt their hearts shake. As their expressions changed drastically, 9 wills with an ancient air and a boundless presence descended swiftly from the air. Each of those 9 wills were on equal grounds in terms of power with the purple Yikang, and that power was one that could instantly kill a person. With anger, the wills descended and rushed towards Su Ming. These 9 wills, these 9 other souls from Yikang's body, sent out an intense wave of displeasure to Su Ming's soul in regards to him killing their tributes. They had a promise between each other that they would not kill each other's tributes, or else there would no longer be any cultivators who would come to the place, and they would no longer obtain what was necessary for them to heal. That was why once Su Ming attacked and killed their tributes, they descended in indignation and started interrogating him. Why did you break our promise? Why did you kill our tributes? Purple, you have to give us an explanation. Purple, they were my tributes. If you can't give me a satisfactory explanation, then even if I have to pay a price, I will make the law here kill several times the number of your tributes in retaliation of the number of my tributes you killed. Su Ming did not back down a single inch in the face of the wrath from the 9 wills in his soul. He instead sent his own will and had it crash against the 9 wills. Your tributes offended me. Su Ming's will did not compromise even the slightest. Instead, the voice from his will echoed unyieldingly in his soul. The 9 wills instantly stopped their interrogation, as if they were thinking about what Su Ming said. Should not those who offended us Yikang be killed? Su Ming's will became even more fierce and unyielding. Several breaths later, the 9 wills roared once again. They should be killed. Those who offend us Yikang should be killed. I see, so that's how it is. Then they should die. They're only tributes, how dare they offend us Yikang? They should die. As the 9 wills roared, It did not matter whether the people who had thrown verbal abuses at Su Ming just now had scattered or entered the world in their stone monuments. They vanished without a trace while screaming shrilly.